Well, hello, cowboys. This is John Wayne Cheeseburger speaking. In my previous life, my name was Sergey, and I was born in the USSR. And before we get going, I would like to say thank you for all my Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for supporting Ushanka Show. So today we're gonna continue learning about life of the Soviet milkmaid, based on a workbook of my distant relative Nila, who lived and worked all her life in northern Ukraine. But first of all, let's talk a little bit some more about collective farm, about kolkhoz. I thought about it, and I don't think farm is the correct translation, because коллективное хозяйство is more like homestead. So коллективное хозяйство is more like collective homestead or collective stead. So it's not really, we didn't use the word farm back then. Actually, ferma was a term, like you have a молочная ферма, milk farm, so collective homestead, this kolkhoz will have milk farm, so there'll be buildings with cows and all that stuff, so there'll be молочная ферма, milk farm. Then of course if you have pigs, and there'll be свиная ферма, pig farm. So we had farm as a part of kolkhoz. Creating of collective farms in the Soviet Union, or as it's called, collectivization, so that's pretty much forcing peasants to work together as a collective instead of being individual homesteaders. It happened during Stalin times from 1928 till 1933. And I need you to keep in mind that that was forced collectivization, wasn't volunteers like, hey, if you would like to join collective farm, please do. There was only two choices: or you join collective farm and you bring your animals to the farm, so you're not allowed to have horses anymore. You can have only one cow, maybe two pigs, so many chickens, or you'll get a free one-way ticket to Siberia, and they're still gonna take your animals and place them into collective farm. I'm actually planning to make a separate video about collectivization, about collective farms, but this is not the topic for today's video. And I would strongly suggest or recommend to watch this video if you're watching, not just listening. I know some people use my videos just for because of my voice. It helps them to go to sleep. But if you're actually interested in this video and to see it, you want to watch it on a big screen on the computer or TV, because we'll be looking at the pages, and they're pretty small letters there. So we already learned that Nila started her career, working career, at the age of 14 back in 1951, and looks like for first 3 years she was just helping around milk farm, and then she became a milkmaid in 1954 when she was 18. And we already talked about these two interesting measurements of the work performance. So they track how many actual days you work, and they call them human days. And then human days were transferred by special formula into labor days. So depending on kind of work you did, you could get 2 labor days out of 1 work day, or you can get a half of the labor day out of work day. That's how she got some crazy amounts, like 771 labor days out of the year. Or in 1957, she worked 630 labor days in a single year. In 58, got even worse, was 694 labor days. So now let's take a look at the page 4 of her workbook, because here we got some additional information that will be interesting to discuss. So her workbook was actually issued in 1966, so now we have a more consistent record of her work activities. So let's take a look at the first 2 lines. First line dates from 1964, and Doyarka, so she worked as a milkmaid. And in the graph number 4, vertical graph, she worked 696 labor days according to formula. It doesn't say how many actual days she worked, but they kept record that she, according to the formula of being milkmaid, she put together 696 work days. 1965, once again milkmaid, her position, and she had 855 work days that were calculated in a year. And then check it out, vertical graph number 6. There's a new number popping which we didn't see before, 120 days. And this is set minimum amount of work days. So government required collective farm worker to work at least a minimum of 120 labor days per year. So this kind of new thing, it's interesting. By the way, does anyone remember what else happened in 1964? If you answered that Nikita Khrushchev was removed from power in 1964, that's the correct answer. So in October 14 of 1964, Nikita was outmaneuvered by his colleagues, and along with Leonid Brezhnev, and he was removed from position of leader of the Soviet Union as well as the leader of Communist Party of the Soviet Union. And I know a lot of people, especially in the Soviet Union, were making fun of Khrushchev and kukuruza, corn, and call him kukuruznik, the corn man. But actually, he was desperately trying to fix situation with food shortages in Soviet Union, and he was willing to try anything to feed his people and actually to prepare conditions for communism to achieve communism by 1980s. And only 3 months prior his removal from power in July of 1964, they had a new law issued, Закон о пенсиях и пособиях колхозникам. So that's a law about pensions and other payments to collective farm workers. Before that, they weren't paid at all, and there was no pension system for collective farm workers. So you could work all your life at the collective farm for just a check mark for palichka for your labor day, and then you retire. There was no pension, no payments, nothing from government or from your own collective farm. I didn't have a chance to look about this law, but definitely in 1966 we see that labor days disappeared. So now they don't have a formula anymore to calculate how hard you worked. So the vertical graph number 4 is empty now. So now they only track graph number 5, which is your actual labor days that you worked, so-called human days. And in 1966, Nila milked cows for 356 days. So out of 365 days in a year, she didn't work 9 days. So this is the life of the Soviet milkmaid, working 356 days in a year, and then required was only 120. Then if we look at 1967, something quite curious happened. So Nila worked that year 355 days. Once again, almost every single day in a year. So besides some, maybe she was sick, or I don't know what else happened. Like she didn't work only 10 days. So she had a day off 1 day a month, pretty much even less than that. But look at the graph number 6. Suddenly, government wants you to work for 200 days a year, 80 days more than the prior year. So something changed. There's new law, new rule, but now they want collective farm workers work even harder. I mean, she's already maxing out every year, but generally they bump your required amount of work days from 120 to 200. And then if we keep on going down, 1968, 322 days, 69, 336 days. 1970, we see drastic drop in her labor days, 225. So she became pregnant in 1970 with her boy. So she worked barely above minimum, still 225 days. I think if you work 5 days a week, you will work 260 days a year. In 1971, it's the year she gave birth, she worked only 135 days, and she had dekretny отпуск. She had a paid leave to have a baby. I think it was 3 months before you give her birth and like 2 weeks or maybe a month after. I don't remember. I made a video about it a long time ago. I don't recall exactly. So that was the year that she had a kid. So she worked only for 135 days. And next year, so baby only 1 year old, and she's already working 359 days. So every day she's gone milking cows. But of course, some people might have questioned, what about compensation? Did they get paid for their work? I mean, there's a lot of labor days and not to be compensated. You gotta make some money somewhere to survive, right? So let's take a look now at the part about her salary. So let's jump back to 1965. So that's the first year of Leonid Brezhnev being leader of Soviet Union. Nila is 28 years old, working as a milkmaid, and her calculated labor days were 855. That's like, I think, the busiest year she had as a milkmaid. And she made, this is graph number 7, 648 rubles in the whole year. So if she worked every single day, it's less than 2 rubles per day doing her work. But then we have those other numbers for the same year. So we need to take a look at those, because that's the most amazing part of being a collective farm worker. Okay, so besides 648 rubles in the whole year annual income, Nila also received from her collective farm 850 kilograms of rye. So that's grain. She also received 451 kilogram of wheat grain, and she also got some straw, saloma. I don't know about 200. I don't think it could be in the kilograms. It's probably some other measurement, because 200 kilogram, well, the straw is light, so I guess it's a large volume. So it looks like collective farm wasn't doing that hot in 1965. Now you have to remember that Soviet Union and socialist system of Soviet Union, we had economy streamlined. We didn't have anything that crazy, stupid, capitalistic ways of trading like Chicago mercantile market when they bid on the future prices for wheat or corn. In Soviet Union, we didn't have that. We had only one buyer, Soviet government. So wholesale prices that were set up by the state, it seems they were a little bit too low, at least in 1965, because Nila worked so much and collective farm barely had any money to pay her for her work. So they, as a part of compensation, just like, okay, take some rye, take some wheat, hey, take some straw, because it's all we have. We didn't make enough money selling our crops, or maybe they had really poor crop, but still, she was milking cows. Usually milk production doesn't depend much on the weather, except maybe it was a really dry year. Then I'm not sure what happened in 1966, but it's the only record that she got 200 kilograms of straw and nothing else. No money were paid to her in 1966. Then from 1967 till 1976, we see a pretty decent growth in her income. I mean, comparatively, it's 1968. Look, she made 903 rubles in a year, and she worked 322 days, and they gave her 242 kilograms of potatoes. So nice little bonus end of the year. A year before, 1967, for 355 days of work, 878 rubles. And then if you look all the way down in 1976, she worked 297 days. So she was working a little bit less, but she made 2,032 rubles. So quite a jump from 1967, 355 days, 878 rubles, and in 1976, so that's pretty much 10 years later or so, a little bit less, you got 2,000 rubles for 297 days. So I played with calculator a little bit, and it looks like in 1967, Nila was making 2 rubles 47 kopecks per day. Then next year was 2 rubles 80 kopecks. Then 3 rubles 8 kopecks. And in 1978, she was making 6 rubles and 84 kopecks per day. And hourly wise, my guess will be she worked probably close to 8 hours. It just was a split in 3 sections. So if you're looking in 1976, 6 rubles 84 kopecks per day. If Nila worked normal schedule, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month, 260 days a year, her monthly salary will be 148 rubles per month. So that's pretty much average salary in the Soviet Union. And that was pretty much what engineer would make in a big city. And that's one of kind of interesting paradoxes of the Soviet society. We have a milkmaid lady milking cows making same money as an engineer who designs rockets or some other high-tech equipment. But in order to kind of switch from rubles to dollars, let's talk about vodka. The reason why I like to use vodka is because that product wasn't subsidized by the government. If we start looking like, okay, how much bread could you buy for 6 rubles 84 kopecks per day, or many times you can ride the subway, it makes the picture really look different because it was heavily subsidized. Vodka wasn't. It was actually a product quite profitable for the Soviet Union. A lot of money were made because government had a monopoly on alcohol production in the Soviet Union. So around 1976, so early 80s, late 1970s, a bottle of vodka in Soviet Union was 3 rubles 62 kopecks. That was actually really famous number, 3.62. So Nila was making 6 rubles 84 kopecks per day in 1976, roughly 2 bottles of vodka per day. In modern day America, a bottle of vodka, $15-$20 per bottle. So she was making about $40 per day, $30 per day. Like if you talking right now, so her income was about $7,200 to $7,800 per year. Of course, we can say after tax because there was really no tax taken out of the salaries, at least what we saw back in the USSR. But of course, when you live in a village and you have a small 1-acre lot that you grow potatoes and some vegetables, and then you have a cow and chicken, so you're pretty much self-sustained there. I mean, you don't spend much. People will be buying only maybe sunflower oil, salt, sugar, bread, maybe some sweets, matches. So expenses while you live in the village were really basic. Then of course, then you gotta consider paying for electricity. So you could save some money if you live off the land and then you milk cows, even for that pathetic salary of $30 per day, which like $3.75 per hour if you work 8 hours. And she sometimes probably work more than that. And of course, no overtime, nothing like that. And of course, you need to keep in mind that living in the village, it's not a computer game. When you play Farmville and you just click with your mouse, you actually need to go and milk a cow. You need to feed your pigs. You need to go in the garden, spend hours and hours every day weeding it. And then, of course, planting by hand, harvesting by hand. Then you need to make sure you have enough hay for your cow to survive through the winter. And that's a lot of heavy manual labor. So no wonder our ladies look like old ladies in their like 50s and 60s. They already looked extremely old. Alright, so that's it for today. I have one more video to make on the topic of this workbook and also answer your questions. So if you guys have any questions related to the collective farms and stuff like that, please post below this video. I already got 2 questions I'm planning to answer. And we'll talk to you soon. До свидания. Goodbye. Hey, by the way, cool merch for cool comrades is available at the Ushanka store at teespring.com. Just a friendly reminder that my book American Diaries is available on amazon.com, or shoot me an email if you would like to have a signed copy. Thank you. And if you love my channel and would like to show your support, please click on the link below this video and become the patron of the Ushanka Show. For as little as $1, you can help us grow and create the new, interesting videos about the life in Soviet